So I was also asked to take a look at the numbers in the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. And I think you're going to see that this is some pretty astonishing stuff. That same numbers keep appearing over and over and over again. And it appears in Judaism, it appears in Christianity, it appears in Islam, and it apparently also appears in the Zoroastrian writings. And I'm still trying to verify statements from Hinduism and Buddhism. But apparently the same numbers keep appearing. So the book of Revelation, also called the Apocalypse, people speak of an apocalypse or life after the apocalypse. Or the apocalypse is actually mislabeled. All the word apocalypse means is revelation. Apo means to go out. Calypse is something that is hidden. So apocalypse literally means to go out from that which is hidden. So the book of Revelation and the apocalypse, they're both the same words. They both mean the same thing. The 7 churches that the book of Revelation were written to are shown there on the left side. That's in Turkey. And it was just off the coast of number 7 there. It's where the island of Patmos was, where John wrote the book of Revelation. So the message of Daniel and Revelation is about the coming of the kingdom. It's not about the end of the world. It's not about being burned up. And as I said, the apocalypse does not mean annihilation or destruction. It just means the unveiling of what is to come. So when Jesus' followers asked him what shall we pray for? Should we pray for God to annihilate Rome? Should we pray for wealth or good looks or whatever? Jesus says, no, pray for the coming of my Father's kingdom. This is the theme of the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. Our Father, who art in heaven, your name is holy, and to pray for your kingdom to come, for your will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. So that's what the book of Daniel is about, and the book of Revelation. So how will the kingdom come? In the 19th chapter of the book of Revelation, it describes this promised one, and his name is not Jesus, by the way, because it says that he has a name written on him that no one knows. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So he's either going to come down riding out from heaven on a horse with an army behind him, and I think it actually says a sword coming out of his mouth. But it also says he's going to come as a thief in the night. And in Matthew 24, it talks about the thief in the night breaking into your house and is gone before you even knew that he was there. Of course, the Apostle Paul says that God has sent many prophets in many different times in various ways. So a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about some of the prophecies that were fulfilled 2,000 years ago. In the 6th chapter of John, Jesus claimed to come down from heaven. And when he said this, he said the rabbis standing there says, wait a second, we knew your mother, we knew your father, we knew that you were born as a child. Where do you get off saying you came down from heaven? And it says that when Jesus' disciples heard this, and Jesus had 12 apostles and approximately 70 disciples, it said that when the disciples heard Jesus claim that he had come down from heaven, it says they abandoned him and walked no more with him, because this was more than they could accept. So the examples of history of prophets coming down from heaven, the other one is Elijah. In the book of 2 Kings 2, 800 BC, Elijah ascends into heaven in a chariot of fire with horses of fire. In the book of Malachi, it promises that Elijah will return from heaven before the Christ comes. So when Jesus was claiming to be the Christ, the rabbis would come to his followers and they would ask, how can Jesus be the Christ when it obviously says that Elijah is going to return first? And no one has seen Elijah come down from heaven in a chariot of fire, so they concluded that Jesus had to be wrong. And Jesus explained to him that the prophecy is true and that they are right. Elijah does have to come first. But the return of Elijah was the coming of John the Baptist. Of course, John the Baptist referred to the Jewish rabbis as a generation of vipers, snakes, the snakes that caused the fall of humanity. So obviously the rabbis didn't like John the Baptist very much, and they certainly would never accept the idea that he was the return of Elijah. So nevertheless, that's who Jesus said he was, that John the Baptist was the return of Elijah. Not the same person who had lived 800 years previously. John obviously was born as a child, but at the beginning of the Gospel of Luke it says that John went forth and spoke with the spirit and power of Elijah. So the same spirit and the same power of Elijah spoke through John the Baptist. This is the modus operandi. In the same prophecy in Malachi, it's the only place in the Old Testament that says, I am God, I do not change. So there must be something important about that particular statement. The fight is the last days. So to get to an explanation of the numbers that are contained in Daniel, Revelation, and the Islamic prophecies, the numbers are in code. There's different numbers, but they all, in one sense, are all the same number, and they all point to the same time frame and to the same event. So I was thinking of Ralphie in the movie Christmas Story. And of course, Ralphie got the decoder ring, which allowed him to decode the message from the radio. And he was disappointed that it was drinking more Ovaltine. So the numbers in the book of Revelation speaks of 7 years, or 7 times, 3.5 years, 3.5 times, 3.5 days, or 3.5 cycles of 360. A circle or cycle has 360 degrees, and the ancients knew this. So Daniel speaks of the 70 weeks. Daniel also speaks of the 2,300 days. Book of Revelation speaks of the 42 months. Revelation also speaks of 1 year, 1 month, 1 day, and 1 hour. And it speaks of 1,260 days. And just a little housekeeping. Solar year is 365 days. A lunar year is 354 days. Babylon was based on lunar years. The Jewish calendar is lunar years. The Islamic calendar is lunar years. The Christian calendar is solar years. A prophetic year is 360 days. This is based on the idea that Noah floated in the ark for 5 months or 150 days. So by that sense, a month is 30 days. So 12 months would be 360 days. An important principle that really helps you unlock what the numbers are talking about is the idea that in the number prophecies, when it says days, it can actually mean years. So this is stated in Ezekiel and Numbers. Ezekiel says, "Thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. I have appointed thee each day for a year." And I think it continues, each day for a year, even 40 years is what it's, that's the Numbers. So after the number of days in which you search the land, this is in Numbers, even 40 days, each day for a year, you shall bear your iniquities, even 40 years. So it talks about 40 days, but what he actually means is 40 years. 40 cycles. So in Daniel 9, there are 12 chapters in the book of Daniel. In chapter 9, Daniel speaks of the 70-week prophecy. And this is the baseline that allows you to understand all the other numbers, because this is a verifiable historic event. So in Daniel 9:27, it says, "From the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem until the Messiah." At this time, the Hebrew people were in captivity in Persia. The Persians had conquered Babylon, so it was the Persians who were now controlling the Jewish people in Babylon, in the Far East, in Iraq. So it says, from the commandment to restore, rebuild Jerusalem, 70 weeks are determined to seal up the vision and to anoint the most holy. The word anoint is Christ. 7 weeks, and then it says it a different way. 7 weeks, 80 and 2 weeks, or 62 weeks, and then 1 week. So the 1 week is right here. 1 week, 62 weeks, 7 weeks, it's all 70 weeks. And the Bible does that. It gives you the same number in different ways. So the day for your principle, how does this work as we apply it to the 70-week prophecy in Daniel 9? So Daniel says that 70 weeks are appointed from the date of the decree to rebuild Jerusalem, then shall Messiah be cut off. So to do the math, figure out how many days are in 70 weeks. So 70 weeks times 70 times 7 is 490. And the statements in Ezekiel and Numbers suggest that that days can equal years in prophecy. So this may mean that the 490 days actually mean 490 years. Now the history. Daniel said that 70 weeks are appointed from the date of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, then shall Messiah be cut off. So when was the decree to rebuild Jerusalem given? It was given by a Persian king named Artaxerxes, and the year of the decree is 457 BC. This is found in the book of Ezra. So it was the Persians who rebuilt Jerusalem. It was the Persians who rebuilt the temple in Jerusalem. So what was Daniel saying? There are 490 days and 70 weeks. If this is actually 490 years, if you add 490 years to 457 BC, you get the cutting off the Messiah somewhere around 33 or 34 AD. There is no year zero. That's one of the problems with BC and AD. There is no year zero. So if you count that way, you end up adding a year to the total. But it's close enough. About 33 or 34 AD, the Messiah will be cut off. So what that means is the 70-week prophecy foretold the cutting off the Messiah sometime around the year 33 AD. Daniel predicted that this would happen hundreds of years before it happened. And this indicates that the book of Daniel is accurate. It shows that Jesus was the Messiah. The word Messiah and Christ are the same word in two different languages. Christ is Greek, Messiah is Jewish, is Hebrew. And it also shows that days can equal years in prophecy. In the 70-week prophecy, just a few verses later, there's another reference to 2,300 days. But for now, just keep that in mind, and I'll get back to that in a little while. I'm going to try to establish more of a foundation here. So the numbers are important keys to understanding what the two books were saying. Both Daniel and Revelation speak of 3.5 years, 3.5 times, 3.5 days, and 3.5 cycles. The book of Revelation speaks of 42 months, and it speaks of 1,260 days. The number 3.5 times appears twice in the book of Daniel. In Daniel 7, it speaks of the fourth beast. So you had the statue, Nebuchadnezzar's statue had 4 segments. And Daniel details each one of these segments in this book. I'm not really going to go into that too much, but what it is the successive empires that had arisen to conquer and control Jerusalem. So in a lot of ways, the imagery of the beasts, is what Daniel calls them, is the foreign empires. There's also imagery where there's stories in Daniel of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. There's the story of Daniel in the lion's den. As a metaphor, if you raise this to the higher level, this is a promise that even though that they will be encompassed by enemies, the Jewish people will still prevail. That these empires will fall, they would be crushed into dust, but yet the Jewish people will survive, and eventually the kingdom of God will come. So Daniel 7 speaks of the fourth beast. And that's important to identify that the fourth beast is here, and he assigns a time to this beast of a time times and a dividing of time, or 3.5 times. And Jesus actually explains this later on in the book of Revelation. And then in the last chapter of the book of Daniel, it talks about there are two personages in the last chapter. One is called Gabriel, the other is called Michael. And Gabriel, if you read the text, is subservient to Michael. There's times when Gabriel asks Michael for permission to do things, and Michael tells him what to do. In religious history, it was Gabriel who appeared to Mary when the angel announced to her that she was pregnant and that she was going to give birth to Jesus, the Messiah. It was also Gabriel who appeared to Muhammad in the cave and announced to him that he needed to start speaking. So Daniel 7:23 and Daniel 12:6 speaks of a time, times and a half. And I'll explain what this means. The number 3.5 times also appears 3 times in the book of Revelation, in the 11th, 12th, and 13th chapters. Again, it speaks of a beast. And this, I get my opinion that this beast is the fourth beast of the book of Daniel. And again, it's the beasts are the succession of empires that conquered Jerusalem. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the imagery and the story of Revelation 7, but for now, just to it says that the 2 witnesses will be killed by a beast, their bodies will lie dead in the street, and they will lie dead in the street for 3 days and a half, or 3 cycles of 360. The word days can also be translated as cycle. Again, in just 4 verses later, after 3 days, the 2 witnesses come back to life, stand on their feet. So again, 3.5 cycles of 360. And then in the next chapter is the story of the woman clothed with the sun and the moon beneath her feet, and she's attacked by this beast again. So Revelation 11, the beast kills the 2 witnesses. Revelation 12, the woman who is pregnant and who is to give birth to the man-child who is to rule all nations. She's opposed by the beast, and the child is taken up to heaven, is protected, and she goes into the wilderness and hides for 3.5 times. This will all make sense in a minute. So the number 3.5 times appears a total of 5 times in Daniel and Revelation. And evidently both books are referring to the fourth beast of the book of Daniel. Revelation 11, the same chapter where it talked about the time, times and a half, it speaks of 42 months. It speaks of 1,203 square days, or 1,260 days. Revelation 12, the story of the woman, the pregnant woman with the child. She is protected in the wilderness. She's forced to flee from the beast, but she is nevertheless protected for 1,260 days. And power was given to this beast to exercise power for 42 months. So it's 3.5 years, 42 months, 1,260 days. Now, to know that 3.5 times actually does equal 1,260, in Revelation 12:6 says that the woman and the child will be protected for 1,260 days. Then just 7 verses later, she says that the woman or child will be taken care of for 3.5 times. So evidently 3.5 times actually is 1,260 days. 3.5 cycles of 360 is 1,260 days. So beginning to see that these are all the same number. 3.5 times indeed is 1,260. But even though they're phrased different ways, they're all the same number. So 3.5 years times 360 days is 1,260 days. 40 months times 30 days in a month is 1,260 days. 1,260 days is 1,260 days, or 1,260 years. So there are 1,260 days in 42 months. There are 42 months in 3.5 years. There are 1,260 days in 3.5 years. And these are all just different ways of saying 1,260. I think that's pretty astonishing. So the story associated with these numbers, 11th chapter of the book of Revelation speaks of 2 witnesses who will prophesy for 1,260 days. 2 prophets who will speak for 1,260 days. These 2 witnesses are attacked and killed by a beast, the 4th beast, and their bodies lie dead in the street for 1,260 days. After 1,260 days, they come back to life and ascend into heaven. And the next chapter, in the 13th chapter, talks about the pregnant woman who is also attacked by a beast, the same beast. She gives birth to a man-child who is to rule all nations with a rod of iron. The child is taken up to heaven, where later on he's going to come back, while the woman hides from the beast for 1,260 days. So what is this all referring to? This is the image on the left, is the image of the pregnant woman. She is clothed with the sun, with the moon below her feet, and she is attacked by this beast. There's also a story of the woman on the right who is called the Whore of Babylon. And this woman rides upon the beast. So one is attacked by the beast, one rides upon the beast. And I would suggest for your consideration that what this is referring to is both women represent the religion of God. One represents the corruption of the religion of God and rides upon the back of the empire, upon the beast, the 4th beast. There's actually a literal historical interpretation of this. So John, the Apostle John, in this 17th chapter of the book of Revelation, starts to identify who the beast is. He speaks of the beast who was. Of course, John lived in New Testament times in the 1st century. But in the 17th chapter of the book of Revelation, he speaks of the beast who was, the beast who is, and the beast who is still yet to arise. And the beast who was were the beasts of the book of Daniel. And these were the empires of the past, the Assyrian, Babylonian, Persian, Greek, Roman. These were the beasts of the past, the beast who was. At the time that John was writing, he speaks of the beast who is. And at that time, it was the Roman Empire. The Romans had arisen after the other beast to also conquer and control Jerusalem. And then he speaks of another beast who is still yet to arise. So who was the only empire to arise after the Romans to conquer and control Jerusalem? And the name of the empire that conquered Jerusalem was the Umayyad dynasty. And later on, the Abbasid dynasty. These are both political elements within early Islam. So the Apostle John describes the beast as having 7 heads and 10 horns. The Whore of Babylon riding on the beast. I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-covered beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The Umayyad Empire was an empire comprising 7 dominions, which stretched from North Africa to Afghanistan, included Israel, Iraq, Iran, Arabia, Libya, and Egypt. And it even included Spain and Portugal. There was one time in the Middle Ages where the Umayyad Muslims who controlled southern Spain and Portugal came within about 100 miles of conquering Paris. And they were very narrowly defeated and forced to retreat. So when Ferdinand and Isabella sent Christopher Columbus to explore with the ship to explore a trade route to India, and he found North America, it was these same king and queen, Ferdinand and Isabella, were the ones who succeeded in expelling the Muslims from Spain. So that's when Muslim Spain, Moorish Spain, ceased to exist. So the empire comprised these countries, and the 10 horns referred to by John are the 10 names of the kings. It was a dynasty. It was a progression of kings. So here's a map of the Roman Empire, and there's a map of the Umayyad Empire. The Umayyad Empire was actually twice as big as the Roman Empire. So if you look in Wikipedia for the world's largest empires, the Umayyad Empire was the world's 7th largest empire, and the Roman Empire was the 17th largest. A lot of people have never even heard of the Umayyad Empire. But when the Crusaders went to Israel to free the Holy Land from the infidels, this is who they were going up against. Now, there was a time when Constantine moved the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome to the Bosphorus, and he built a city known as Constantinople. Today it's known as Istanbul. So the Byzantines, the Christians, controlled the city until the middle of the 1400s. So Constantine lived in the 3rd century. So for the next 11 centuries, the Christians controlled Constantinople. There's another event in the book of Revelation that describes the conquest of Constantinople by the Muslims. List the 4 angels which were bound at the great river Euphrates, which is in Iraq. The 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, a day, a month, and a year to slay the 3rd part of man, the 3rd part of Christianity. So again, using the day for a year principle, a year is 360, a month is 30, a day is 1, and an hour is 1/24 of a day. That's a total of 391 days. The Muslims conquered Constantinople in 1453. The duration of the wrath of the angels is 391 years. If you add 391 to 1453, which is the date of Constantinople, it gives you the date 1844. This was the end of the dispensation of Muhammad, whose followers had controlled the Holy Land for 1260 years. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So the same numbers found in the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation are also found in the Islamic prophecies. So it says, the apostle of God said, the apostle of God is Muhammad, there will come a time for my people when there shall remain nothing of the Quran except its outward form, and nothing of Islam except its name. And they shall call themselves by this name, even though they are the people furthest from it. The mosques will be full of people, but they will be empty of right guidance. The religious leaders of that day will be the most evil religious leaders under the heavens. This is what Muhammad said about what's going to happen to his own religion. Muhammad also said, by him whose hand is my soul, my ummah, my people, will split into 73 sects. 1 will enter paradise, and 72 will go to hell. This is Muhammad talking about Islam. To briefly explain the political structure of Islam immediately after the death of Muhammad, Muhammad died, and he supposedly named his son-in-law, his cousin, son-in-law, Ali, as the leader of the community after his own passing. This was Ali, and Ali was the wife of Muhammad's daughter, Fatima. So on one hand, you had family leadership. On the other hand, you had a rival leadership which composed of people who were originally Muhammad's greatest enemies in Mecca. And so this is the origin of the Sunni and the Shia branches of Islam. This goes back right to the death of Muhammad. The Shia are the followers of the family line. The Sunnis are the ones who elect their leadership, although that never actually happened, since when the Umayyads stepped in, seized control of Islam, it became a family dynasty. So nominally there were elections, but the caliph elected was Umayyad. And then after the Umayyad dynasty was conquered, another dynasty took over, and this was the Abbasid dynasty. So the Umayyads were based in Damascus, the Abbasids were based in Baghdad. So the Arabian Nights stories, these are the Abbasids. So you had two rival factions, one through the family line. There were 12 family leaders of Muhammad who successfully, one after the other, led the religion, led the Shia branch of the religion. All of the imams, the leader of the family line, were killed. And they were killed by the other faction, by the Umayyads. So this is what Muhammad was talking about. Sure.
Go get away from the Jewish and the Christian prophets. It seems to me, just casually listening to this, that if we believe in the Bible, we believe in the prophets. If we believe in the prophets, we'd have to believe that everything is preordained. We don't have any control in the matter. They know when it's going to fall, who's going to take over.
Yes.
And they forecast generations and thousands and hundreds of years ahead of time, so nothing anybody can do about it.
Well, I don't think you can stop it, but you can hinder it. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say here with explaining the numbers, is that there actually is a timeline. That this has been ordained 2,500 years ago, at least. So Muhammad said to his followers, some of his followers will be the worst on earth. He says that majority of his followers that Islam will split into 73 sects, all but a tiny minority will be right. And I've spoken to Muslims at the mosque here, and they actually quoted this to me, even without me mentioning it. Of course, they think that they're the one that's doing good. So another story in the book of Daniel that relates to the story of the rise of the family line, Muhammad's family line, and the other side. So this is the imams and the caliphs. The family line is the imams. The Umayyad dynasty is the caliphs. So in Daniel 3, tells a story of Nebuchadnezzar made another image of gold whose height was 80 cubits, and he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. I don't know how significant this is, but what's interesting is there are 21 inches in a cubit. A cubit is the length of a man's forearm. So if the statue is 60 cubits high, and there are 21 inches in a cubit, this means that the statue was 1,260. Another reference to the 1260. What's interesting is Daniel says that this was built on the plain of Dura. And when Daniel refused to bow down to the statue, this is when they put him in the lion's den. The plain of Dura today is in Iraq and is known as the plain of Karbala. So today on the plain of Karbala, there are beautiful twin mosques. One is dedicated to the Imam Hussein, and Hussein was Muhammad's grandson. And it was on the plain of Dura, or the plain of Karbala, that the Umayyad king trapped the family of Muhammad's grandson and killed them all. So today this is known as Ashura. So if you see these on TV or whatever of the Muslims who cut their heads, who beat themselves with chains, this is what they're commemorating, is the death of Muhammad's grandson on the plain of Karbala, which is referred to in the book of Daniel as the plain of Dura. So back to the Islamic prophecies. So Muhammad says that his religion would decline to the point where it would almost be forgotten, that the truth will be forgotten. But then he promises that it will be renewed or resurrected or regenerated. So were there remaining but one day of the duration of all time, God will send forth a man from the people of my house, a direct descendant of Muhammad, who will fill the earth with equity, and it has been as it has been filled with oppression. The blood relatives of Muhammad are known as Sayyids. For centuries, they have identified themselves by wearing green, either a green sash or a green hat or turban. But it is the Sayyids, the one member of Muhammad's family line, who is supposed to arise and renew religion. And the word Islam, by the way, is identified as the religion that goes back at least to the time of Abraham. So it's not just Muhammad's revelation, it's all of God's revelation. And then there's a couple of references to 1,000 years in the Quran. He speaks of a day that is 1,000 years of what you reckon. So, as I said, the family members of Muhammad, the Shia side of Islam, were all killed by the rival faction. The last of the imams, the last of the family members, was either killed or disappeared in the year 260 of the Islamic calendar. So there are people that say that what the 1,000 years is a reference to is a 1,000-year duration after the disappearance of the last imam, the last family member. That again would give the year 1260. And again, one of the grandsons of Muhammad, he was a distant grandson, he was one of the imams, and he himself was killed. Was questioned concerning the year in which the Gaim is one who will arise. One who will arise from the family line of Muhammad. This is the Islamic Messiah. When he will be made manifest, he replied, verily in the year 60. His cause shall be revealed, and his name shall be noised abroad. It's a form of the number 1260. Another one says, a year of his revelation is identical with half of that number, which is divisible by 9. So half of 2520, which is divisible by 9, is 1260. One of the famous Islamic poets related to the year of the manifestation of the Islamic Messiah says that in the year Gars, the earth shall be illumined by his light. The word Gars is an Arabic word meaning the planting, and it has a numerical value of 1260. And in a tradition ascribed to Imam Ali, Ali was Muhammad's grandson and the husband of Muhammad's daughter, and he's the one that Muhammad indicated as the leader of Islam after his own death. So Imam Ali supposedly said, in Gars, and of course the word Gars means the planting, in Gars the tree of divine guidance shall be planted. And again, the word Gars has a numerical value of 1260. So Daniel, Revelation, and Islam all point to the year 1260 of the Islamic calendar. And the year 1260 of the Islamic calendar is the year 1844 in our calendar. Now to get back to Daniel's 70-week prophecy, and that's the one, 70 weeks are appointed from the date of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, then shall Messiah be cut off. 490 days or 490 years added to the date of the decree was 457 BC. It says the Messiah shall be cut off somewhere around AD 33, which was the approximate date of the crucifixion of Jesus. So just a few verses later, in the same passage, in the 70-week passage, it speaks of 2,300 days. Daniel's 2,300-day abomination of desolation prophecy was referred to by Jesus in Matthew 24. So Jesus points to Daniel's abomination of desolation prophecy as the time he was asked. That'll be the next page. So Matthew 24, at the beginning, as he, Jesus, sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately and says, "Tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the world?" Two key mistranslations here. The phrase, sign of thy coming, is translated from the original Greek parousia, which means the presence. When is the presence going to return? And it does not say end of the world. In the original Greek, the word that is used is aeon, which is age or dispensation. So Jesus answers, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, get ready. So Jesus was asked about the return of the presence. He referred them back to the prophecy of Daniel. Now, the abomination of desolation prophecy that was just referred to by Jesus is found in Daniel 8:13. And here it says that it would last for 2,300 days. How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression to give forth the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And he said, unto me, unto 2,300 days. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So Jesus refers to the 2,300 days. So what does this mean? 70-week prophecy and the 2,300-day prophecies are found just a few verses apart from each other. So we can maybe conclude that they're actually two different parts of the same prophecy. So if we use the same starting point of 457 BC that we used in the 70-week prophecy, at this time we count forward 2,300 years, we get the year, the end of the abomination of desolation, and we get the year of the return of the Christ's presence. So 457 plus the 2,300 years, again, equals 1844. I'm getting to that. So again, at the beginning of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream where he's a tree, and the tree grows to the heavens. And this is symbolic or a metaphor for the kings of the earth thinking that they're so great that they are greater than God. So Daniel interprets the dream. Then it says, to show the king that he is not the one that's in charge, a watcher and a holy one comes down from heaven and commands that the tree be hewn down, its branches and foliage stripped, and commands that the stump and roots be left in the ground. Left in the ground as a reminder. Then it says the king goes insane for a 7-year period of time. Again, day for a year. Multiply 7 years times 360 days. That gives you 2,520 days. The day for year principle, that's 2,520 years. So Nebuchadnezzar took power about 603 BC. The statement in the book of Daniel says that Nebuchadnezzar's madness is given after 12 months. There's no other dates given, so we would maybe assume that this count of 7 times begins in 602 BC. So start at 602 BC, count forward 2,520 years, it gives you 1844. 1844, the Turkish government signed something called the Edict of Toleration. At that time, the Turkish Ottoman Empire controlled Jerusalem and controlled the Holy Land and controlled most of the region. So they signed the Edict of Toleration, which allowed the Jews to return to Israel after almost 18 centuries of exile. And this is one of the prerequisites for the reestablishment of the nation of Israel. So in conclusion, the conquest of Jerusalem by this series of foreign empires, which lasted for more than 2,500 years, is one of the interpretations of the abomination of desolation, or the abomination which was referred to by both Daniel and Jesus. Now in Daniel 12:4, and this is the last chapter, Daniel is told, "Go your way. Shut up the words and seal the book, for the time of the end many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased." So according to Daniel, the books have been sealed until a time when knowledge will be increased. And that's the time we live in now. The two figures in the book of Daniel, the Gabriel and Michael, were asked, how long shall be to the end of these wonders? And again, they're referred to a time, times and a half, to scatter the power of the holy people, and says at this time, this whole process will be finished. And then Daniel refers to 1260, 1290, and 1335. So if it is true that 1260 is 1844 in our calendar, 1290 is within about 30 years of that, and then 1335 is sometime in the middle of the 1900s. The truce of Al-Hudaybiyah was when Muhammad conquered his enemies and took control of Mecca. So this is when Islam was firmly established. And this happened in 628 of the Christian era. So 1335, from the solar years from 628, would be sometime in the 1960s. To summarize what Revelation was talking about, it's not the end of the world. It talks about a new heaven and a new earth. We get a new Jerusalem. In the book of Isaiah, Isaiah talks about Jerusalem has become a whore. Here it says Jerusalem will be renewed. It is not annihilation, it's not nuclear war. He says that all things will be made new. It says the city, the new city, the new Jerusalem, has no need for the sun, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb, the two, the Gabriel and the Michael. And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth shall bring their glory and honor unto it. So who fits the criteria? As far as I know, there's only 3 religious groups that care anything about 1844. One is the Seventh-day Adventists. They calculated the prophecies of the Bible, decided that they came out to 1844. They supposedly went out on the mountaintops and waited, and nothing happened. And the Seventh-day Adventists refer to this as the great disappointment. Another group is the Mormons. There's a Mormon prophecy that says one mighty and strong will arise. Just to paraphrase it, when Joseph Smith is shot, when the one who reaches out his hand to steady the ark of God is struck down as by a vivid shaft of lightning, then one mighty and strong will arise in the east, is what the Mormon prophecy says. Joseph Smith was shot in 1844. So according to Mormon prophecies, this is when something should have happened. There's a third group that believes that at this time 2 prophets actually did appear. And in the words of the great philosopher, Dr. Seuss, take it or leave it. So as I said, beginning in 1844, 2 prophets appeared. Much of the story has to do with Persia, Iraq, and in Israel. The second of the 2 prophets, the first prophet was a Gabriel figure. He was a forerunner like John the Baptist, and he announced that he had come to prepare the way for the coming of the one who is foretold in the prophecies. And he was killed. The second one, his name is Baha'u'llah, claimed to be the one foretold in the books. And this is what Baha'u'llah wrote. The time foreordained unto the peoples and kindreds of the earth is now come. The promises of God as recorded in the Holy Scriptures have all been fulfilled. The revelation which from time immemorial hath been acclaimed as the purpose and promise of all the prophets of God and the most cherished desire of his messengers, hath now, by virtue of the pervasive will of the Almighty and at his irresistible bidding, been revealed unto men. The advent of such a revelation hath been heralded in all the sacred scriptures. Behold, how, notwithstanding such an announcement, mankind has strayed from its path and shut out itself from its glory. So what evidence is there that Baha'u'llah might actually be the one who was foretold? So in the 16th chapter of the book of Revelation, it gives a series of events. And it talks about the coming of the royal ones from the east. One of the interesting things about Baha'u'llah is that he was royalty. He was descended not only from the Persian kings, but because of that, he was able to trace his family line back to the kings of ancient Israel, back to King David. So the seven last plagues of the 16th chapter of the book of Revelation speaks of the coming of the royal ones from the place symbolized by the sun. Persia on its flag had the symbol of the sun. The fifth plague poured out upon the seed of the beast. The seed of the beast was the Islamic leadership, the illegitimate leadership, the descendants of the Umayyads and the Abbasids. It says he poured out his vial upon the river Euphrates. So what happened is when Baha'u'llah began to teach, he arose in Persia. He had a forerunner who was killed. He began to teach, and he was opposed both by the religious leaders and the political leaders. So this is the woman, the whore of Babylon, riding upon the beast. He was exiled away from his homeland to the river Euphrates, to Baghdad. Another exile was to the seat of the beast, which was the capital of the empire, which was Constantinople or Istanbul. And then it says that his next exile was to a place called Har-Magedon. This is the Har-Magedon. It's a two-part word. The Hebrew word Har means mountain. Magedon refers to the city of Megiddo. And right there is where the city of Megiddo. It's a very strategic pass. The mountain of Megiddo, the Har-Magedon, is this mountain right here. And that's Mount Carmel. And there's a lot about Mount Carmel. And then it says that the last plague, the word plague can actually be translated as indignity. But it speaks of, this is the breaking of the power of Babylon, is what it's talking about here. And the last vial poured into the air is into the air, so it's a universal event. So Jesus said, I saw new heavens and a new earth. You get a whole new Jerusalem. I make all things new. The New Jerusalem, the light of the city, is the glory of God. The name Baha'u'llah actually means the glory of God. His forerunner was killed. This is the Lamb, the glory of God in the Lamb. And then back in the 16th chapter of Revelation, it talks about him coming as a thief in the night. Where in the 24th chapter of Matthew, it talks about the thief comes, breaks into your house, and is gone before you even knew that he was there. And if you want to know more about the story, the book on the right is a good source. Thief in the Night by William Sears. So the Har-Magedon is Mount Carmel. And this is Mount Carmel in 1900. This is Mount Carmel today. This is the World Administrative Center of Baha'u'llah's religion. So the book of Isaiah said that the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose, and Carmel and Sharon, they shall see the glory of the Lord. So this is Mount Carmel today, and Baha'u'llah's name means the glory of the Lord. Another picture of it. So I'll end with this statement from Baha'u'llah. It says, "Verily this is the day in which mankind can behold the face and hear the voice of the Promised One. The call of God hath been raised, and the light of his countenance hath been lifted up upon men. It behooveth every man to blot out the trace of every idle word from the tablet of his heart, and to gaze with an open and unbiased mind on the signs of his revelation, the proofs of his mission, and the tokens of his glory." And again, that's Mount Carmel. Well, next week I'm going to be talking about Isaiah. So what thoughts do you have about this? Have you ever heard of this before?
What's that?
Have you ever heard this story before?
In bits and pieces, but the thing that grabs me is these prophets, their audience, they're common men. Many of them are illiterate.
Yes.
So why did they want to speak in riddles so that nobody could understand them?
Well, Daniel said that the books are sealed until the time of the end. So
Why?
not me that did it, so you're asking the wrong person.
Sometimes things are, sometimes when you don't understand something, it doesn't mean they're profound, it just means they weren't explained satisfactorily.
Yeah. Well, and the books were sealed, and one of the things actually that Baha'u'llah did was unseal the books. So he explained all this. But,
no, I think these are, you explained it very well. I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
But it's just the whole concept of this that it's just a little bit over my head.
well, Jesus was asked why he taught by using parables. And he says, speaking to his followers, he says, because it has been given to you, his followers, to know the mysteries. These are mysteries. The mysteries of the kingdom of God, because these other people, seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. So I think one of the reasons for these things being expressed in parables and in mysteries is to test you and to test us.
But Jesus spoke in a way that the common person could understand him, the prodigal son, etc., etc.
Yeah.
This guy here making codes, people didn't even know how to read and write, to do higher math.
Well, the very first frame in this presentation, it says that this is a revelation from Jesus Christ. So the book of Revelation is from Jesus, dictated to John. I guess you could say that it's the same voice that dictated it to Daniel.
After considering all those coincidences of numbers that added up finally,
Yeah.
12, 16, different religions,
Yes.
what do you think is the significance of the number 12?
It's the year 1844. That's the time when the kingdom was supposed to come. That's the time when this prophet was supposed to appear.
Oh, I see, 112.
And he did appear. And what you're looking at now is the transformation of the mountain. It's already well underway. So if you haven't heard about it before, you've heard about it now. So.
What was the religion of Persia in BC times?
Zoroastrian. Yes. So Zoroastrian was probably one of the most widespread religions on earth at that time. Well, of course, Judaism was there too, but the Jews interacted with the Zoroastrians, and the Jews were taken captive into Babylon. But they're both monotheistic religions. They both have a code of laws. They're very similar. And in fact, Islam is a monotheistic religion with a code of laws, very similar to Judaism. So, yeah, and they all are descended from Abraham. So, well, next week is Isaiah. Okay.